Okay, we'll start. I'll do the chanting today. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhanaktu Sahaviryam Karavai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we are seeing entered the crucial phase of the book now. Why I say it is crucial is because it is that part which is directly related to inner freedom, directly related to moksha, liberation. Entire Vedantic study has only one end. What is that end? Is to know oneself, one's true nature, one's actual being. हम हैं क्या? कौन है हम? When I say मैं, तो ये मैं क्या है? ये मैं कौन है? मैं शब्द में क्या है? How is मैं being referred to? What does it refer to? When I say मैं, in that मैं, what is in my perception? What am I pointing to? My मैं refers to what? Points to what? When I say आप, when I say you, what am I referring to? When I say you, what is this you constituted of? When I say you are this two different things, you and are? You are a wonderful person. When I say, are all these words referring to the same entity? You are a wonderful person. Person, wonderful, you are. To our common knowledge, they all mean to refer to whoever that name and form I'm pointing at. That you would imply whatever is being pointed at in the Drishyam Jagat. You means I'm referring to the name and the form. When I say you are a wonderful being, is being a name and form? Is wonderful what you are? Are you nothing else? Are you only made up of being wonderful? Is wonderful only applicable to you and to nobody else? Is it unique to you? Is it only referring to you? Are. Is that are, you are, आप हो. Hindi में हो, हूँ would be the like is and are. आप बहुत अच्छे हो. Ho. This ho is referring to what? Aap is referring to what? You is referring to what? I am is referring to what? I am. This I, what is it pointing to? You are a wonderful being. What is it pointing to? The question and reflection on this question, trying to arrive at a definite answer of this, an answer which will not change at another understanding. All our knowledge with better understanding seems to undergo a modification. But if I have to find the real answer, I must get the answer which will not change again. I is pointing to what? That means if I inquire along this, I must figure it out, I must think about it, I must reflect on it. And when I start examining the I component in my experience, that answer that I should come up with should not change in time or in circumstances. That means there cannot be a better understanding coming at another point of time. It has to be a clinching understanding, a definite understanding, a complete understanding, and that is what is called Atma vichara, self-analysis. It is called Atma vichara, Atma, knowing oneself. It is called knowledge of the self, knowing oneself. This portion is the goal of Vedantic knowledge. Sab Vedant Shravan karke, whatever text you do, whatever you learn in the name of Vedanta, it all points out at the end to discerning the nature of oneself. Shastra gives us the word so it becomes easy to jump over. I am Atma, you are Brahman, I am Brahman. It becomes easy in the intellect to jump over to that word, but arriving at it through analysis, through the process of discernment, that Atma Vichar is the process here that Ramana seems to have bridged for us by connecting how the thoughts play in the mind and the relation of these thoughts to the thinker. I am a thinker with reference to my thoughts. I am an experiencer with reference to my experience. I am a doer with reference to my action. I is common. I am a wife with reference to a husband. I am a teacher with reference to a student. I am a student with reference to a teacher. I am a mother to a child, etc., etc. All this centering around I, but if in my idea of I is this external seen name and form, identified with the name, if this is my I, then this I is not a conclusive understanding. It is subject to change. So Atma Vichar is pointing to figuring out the relation between first the thinker and the thought. Now, in the previous verse, he said there are two kinds of yogis. Yogi means anyone who is in an attempt. Yoga, yuj dhatu, yuj means to join, to unite, means to putting in the effort, putting in the yatnam, prayatnam, to unite as if there is no dissociation. But to us, it looks like I have to reach there. I have to become that. I have to discover that. That distance that is felt or the dissociation that is felt, here Ramana says, this yati, two kinds of yatis. One yati is who has, with a lot of practice through all these previous exercises up to the point of pranayama, through Hatha Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, through all this karma, upasana, bhakti, when he has come to the point of arriving at control of mind, his mind is under his control. One kind of a yogi is who now controls his mind. For most of us, हमारा हाल क्या है? Our mind controls us. हमारा माइंड हमें कहता है अब मुझे ये करना है, ये नहीं करना है, मुझे यहाँ जाना है, मुझे वहां नहीं जाना है. It's our mind which dictates to us predominantly in the day. It has a strength of its own. It works as if with its own power. It seems to be an independent entity. First point to note, to observe in oneself. Our mind seems to have so much strength of its own. अपनी बात करता रहता है. And when we did the workshop and we said, I think we did that exercise, if we just keep quiet for a little, just do nothing. Now do nothing. If I just stay quiet for next 30 seconds, do nothing. Up to 5 seconds, 10 seconds to each one our own, up to maybe 30 seconds, 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. What happens to the mind? निकल जाता है. अपने अपने रास्ते पे पता नहीं कुछ some thought को लेके बैठ जाता है. On an average, those who have done no spiritual exercise of these that have been mentioned so far, anything, in any religion, in any, under any name, those who have not done any mental exercise at all, how are their minds? Their minds are completely so dictating that there seems to be a subservience in the individuality to one's mind. I'm a servant to my mind. I follow the instructions of my mind. My mind is powerful. My mind seems to have a strength. My mind seems a strength in a negative sense. Force, let's put it force. I'll distinguish the word strength and force. Strength is in a positive sense. When our mind is strong, means it has the capacity to guide, to be listening to the individual. It's a strong mind. It's a good mind, relatively just using the words. It has force of its own, means it takes the individual away. Mind by itself is dissipated for average person. Without spiritual practices, mind by nature is going to be dissipated. It goes on its own realms. बैठ निकलता है बस. What is the first kind of a yogi? Through lot of practice of any one of these, they're all aiming, we saw the verse, all these spiritual practices, their aim is to let the mind remain in its seat of origin. Which means, बाहर जो ये निकल जाता है, या अपने आप आगे पीछे भागता है, past, future, जो हलचल में रहता है, which is restless. The yogi with effort is now able to curtail the mind in its source. Which means, without the permission of the individual, the mind is now sitting content, but it's not blank and it is not sleepy. It is awake, it is invigorating, it is relaxed, it is extremely detached and very objective. It is, I would use the symbol, or I would use the allegory of, it is like a full bloomed flower which very naturally gives a fragrance, a rose or a champa. Naturally it will exhibit fragrance. A mind which is held in itself is not running helter-skelter, like a chicken without an egg, the kahavat. All of us are like chicken without an egg. ये कर रहे हैं, वो कर रहे हैं, आधा छूटता है, यहाँ जाते हैं, वो करते हैं, all that stuff. The first effort the yogi puts, the first kind of a yogi is, with effort, he is now able to curtail the mind into a certain boundary. May not be exactly in its source, but he has it fairly under his boundary. He's been able to give a boundary to the mind. Second kind of a yogi Ramana said, is the exalted yogi. This is the yogi who has not only curtailed the mind, his mind has got so purified that it has become purified by all these practices. It's become clear, it's become clean, it's freed of this mala, a water, dirty water and pure water. So the mind has now been, it's alike pure water, clean water. It's freed of its mala. And importantly, it is freed of this movement. जो निकल जाता है हमारा मन, the contrast has to be seen. There are three people we are referring to. The book has referred to two yogis. To bring the context of the two yogis, I am bringing the third person who is still not a yogi. उसका mind कैसा है? All of us. रहता ही नहीं एक जगह पे. Like a child's mind. It's so bright, it's so fresh, but it is not ever steady. It is not like a flame in a windless place. It's not steady. Even if there's a flame, the breeze takes it away. So जहां की हवा जैसे आती है, तो कान ने कुछ सुना तो मन उसके साथ निकल गया, आंखों ने कुछ देखा तो मन वहां निकल गया, स्मेल किया तो मन वहां निकल गया, अगर खाली भी बैठा है तो अपने इमोशंस में निकल गया, फ्यूचर में निकल गया. That means throughout you see that the mind is just not able to stay quiet. Even when it's engaged deeply into doing something, there are layers and layers of talking that goes on in the mind for most people, I think. I can be safe to assume that. From here, the first yogi, who's now through practices or any of the spiritual practices, is now put a limit to the movement. The second exalted yogi is that the mind is free of movement. It does not move on its own. This seems like an impossible thing to all of us. Ramana gives an example in one of his talks, probably. He says, to understand this, because these are so subtle that for us it may be just information. So there are a lot of examples parallel shown. He says if there is a cow who has got used to thieving into others' pastures, nikal ke goes to other pastures, others, and eats only there. A cow whose nature is leaves its own, goes to others' pastures and eats there, and then returns back. But this cow's got this habit. Now, once you start keeping the cow in the shed, initially the cow doesn't know, even if you feed it the best grass, the cow is not comfortable to eat it unless it will only eat a little. It will still look for ways to go out. I don't have to complete the sentence. I'm sure all of us understand. What will happen after a few weeks or months to this cow?
It will start eating
It will start
the
eating
plants that we are feeding. So
and it will stop wanting to run away. It'll stop, it won't, it'll just forget that it was used to running away. Its nature as if changed with spiritual practice. In fact, if the practice is not bringing such a change to the mind, then that means somewhere I'm missing out something. The purpose of all spiritual practices, and I'm repeating, I always feel maybe the emphasis is not given enough. I know it has been given. I know everybody's understood, conveyed well, but I still feel I need to point it again. Any spiritual practice, it is called only spiritual practice if it first aims at making a change in the mind. The natural mind that we have, it makes it samskritam. It makes it dignified. It makes it purified. It makes it graceful. The mind changes. उसका स्वभाव बदल जाता है. जो ये भागता है, it now is able to hold itself. And very slowly, just as the cow, with some practice, now doesn't run away and is comfortable eating after some time from what is given, that transition stage is actually what I always refer to as is called tapas. It will have to be sustained. If a person who started the process of yoga means undertaking a spiritual life, undertaking some practice, study, anything. If a person has started this, the result is not to be seen immediately. Till it comes, there is that restlessness of a cow, which wants to run away, but it is kept there. That stage is called tapas. But once one crosses that stage, now the mind, Ramana says, has become free of movement. There are two different things. And this is very subtle and extremely eye-opening to any practitioner. What is the first stage of a yoga? In the yogi's term, in Ashtanga Yoga, as he said, pranayam, or through all these upasanas and karma yoga. In karma yoga also, he said, the highest form of puja is when you are able to serve people thinking that all this is Bhagwan. That means even this will change my mind. Then upasana, it said even upasana will change mind. Then even this will change a person's mind. Now what is ultimately he is saying? All this will give some strength to the individual to control the mind. The mind is now under control. But if you leave the control, what will happen? धीरे धीरे फिर निकल जाएगा. If you leave the control, that means the control and the supervision is still necessary. That is what that dhara also he said, broken dhara, unbroken dhara. It is not effortless. But a little more practice that this person does, the end of that practice, by end, he says he's got free of movement means now you don't need control. अपने आप से मन जाता नहीं, मगर जहां जाना होता है, जितना जाना है, उतना engage होके it comes back to its own source. This is very important. That means
मन का नाश नहीं हुआ ना इसमें.
हाँ, अभी नाश नहीं हुआ है. Not yet. Abhi, it is still in the stage of now this mind, it's an important point here now. And that's the bridge. This mind is now going to be able to, because it can remain in its source. Abhi nahi raha, ja nahi raha kahin pe. It abides in its own self. The individual now, this jiva now, because the mind stays in the source, is able to observe ये निकल कहाँ से रहा है. आसान हो जाएगा ना फिर ढूंढना. If mostly the mind remains in its source, and supposing I have to talk to someone, otherwise the mind is just quiet, I'm alert, quiet, and the minute I talk, the mind has emerged. That emergence this I'm saying in Vyavhar, but one doesn't have to. At this point, thought itself, when it emerges, here itself, this person will see the source at which it emerges. And that source, he has pointed so far as saying that this is Atma, consciousness, pure. And now to refine this further are the following verses he's going to say, which he started from the 17th verse. That through this, that's what all the practices are doing. To yogis means now mano laya ho sakta hai. But mano nash ki ab vritti kya hai? How is mano nash to happen? What is the exercise of mano nash? What is the procedure of mano nash? What is the way in which I should inquire that there will be mano nash? Because अब जब तक मन की movement से भी free हो गया है, it is still manolaya. It is not manonasha. That means thought abhi bhi niklega. But now the mind has so much quietude because it's free. And that word I have to highlight, I think 100 times I would highlight that. Free movement. Free movement means it's like India as a citizen. Where do I have a free movement? Wherever the boundary of India is. And a few more countries which will accept my passport, which I don't need a passport for. This is my free movement. I'm not going to be questioned anywhere. As an Indian national, as an Indian citizen, I have a free movement here. But the minute I step out of my zone, I will not have a free movement. So the free movement is implying a big thing. The mind has now freedom to move. आदतों से free हो गया है. It is not forceful movement like we all have. And these are many layers of thoughts. This is a very specific method. Our superficial thoughts are one thing, but under these thoughts, there'll be many layers that keep erupting, which are still forcing the mind in a particular way of thinking. All our kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya, all these impulses are today nothing but force of thought. And this force of thought hasn't come with one day, one activity, one person. It's an accumulated force. So what was the first thing that has to be done? The force is reduced. And then how is it reduced? Through all these spiritual practices, the force gets reduced. And then it has now got the capacity to remain under control. And then it has become now free movement, means it goes, but it is not attached to anything. It goes, but it doesn't yearn anything. It goes wherever it needs to have vyavhar, whichever sensory interaction it has to do, even if it has to go into the past to examine certain things, it will go, it will inquire, but it is not clinging to anything. It has not formed. Today, what are we huge with? हम आज भी योगी हैं, लेकिन हम किसके योगी हैं? हम भोगी के योगी हैं. We are attached to all our sense enjoyments and perceptions, and that flow is so natural to us that we call that life. Without these raga, dvesha, kama, krodha, lobha, moha, etc., we in fact qualify them to be life. So this person, he says, up to this point, and now once the mind has got a free movement, means it is purified and has a free movement. It will not hang on to anything. It will not cling on to anything. It will not hold on to anything. It will not be scared of leaving anything. It will not have insecurity. It will not have fear. It won't have. Not that it is still not subject to, because manonash nahi hai. It is still subject to, but relatively now it is freed of all these impulses and jealousies and angers, and relatively it has become now a strong mind. This free mind is a strong mind. The other mind is a forceful mind. अपने आप निकलता है, हमें भी ले जाता है. It's like a bard. It's like a flood. The thoughts are like a flood. They just come and overtake us completely. And you're a different person. So many of us have always said when we get angry, or if you would have seen it, others see it in us when we get angry, or we see it in others when they are angry. Even the color of the face changes, right? Expression तो बदलता ही है, रंग भी बदल जाता है चेहरे का. Everything changes. Because now it's become, you have become a victim to your thoughts, to your own thoughts. And this, he says, 17th verse onwards, now starts the direct process. of Manonash. What is it? He says it starts with inquiry. What is mind? And this is now very important. I started the class by saying, to us, mind is like a different entity. Am I right on that statement or not? Do you think different? Do we feel mind is like अपने आप ही एक काम करता रहता है? Our mind has thoughts. We hardly produce thoughts. Do we encourage thoughts, control thoughts? Do we generate thoughts? What is mind? Simplified thoughts, bundle of thoughts. Do we see it as separate from us? Or do we see it as me? Me, but having a force of its own. मुझसे काम कराता है ये most of the times. उसे जो अच्छा लगता है मुझे वो खाना पड़ता है. Unless I have trained it other way. उसे जो music अच्छा लगता है मुझे वो सुनना पड़ता है. Unless until I don't have a distance as if between me and the mind. But I see that the mind has an activity of its own. It dictates me. It tells me, अब मुझे ये चाहिए, अब मुझे ये करना है, अब मुझे वो नहीं करना है, अब मुझे इसके पास जाना है, अब मुझे इसके पास नहीं जाना है, अब मुझे ऐसा करना है, अब मुझे ऐसा नहीं करना है, मुझे ये अच्छा लगता है, मुझे ये अच्छा नहीं लगता है, अब तुम भी मत जाओ क्योंकि मुझे अच्छा नहीं लगता है, तुम जाओ क्योंकि मुझे अच्छा लगता है. Sorry, you want to say something, Priyanka?
Yeah. So I wanted to say we don't see the difference, or that there are two possibilities. One is that the mind is doing things on its own, and the other option we have is to make the mind do what we think it should be doing. And that is when we realize I am different from the mind.
Mhm.
In the first case, we feel we are the mind.
Absolutely. So now this that mind is different from us. This means I, as a person, am standing a little objective to the flow of thoughts. What Shastra would have said, Sakshi, witness. But that's a big term at this context. But it is if you're a Sakshi to your thoughts, if you're a witness to your thoughts, then mind is separate. It is a separate entity, you're watching it. You are able to see the thought. But Ramana says, and this is a change in thinking, these two are both in our experience so far. एक है कि हम जुड़े हुए हैं मन से, हमें अलग दिखता ही नहीं मन अपने से. दूसरा है कि हाँ थोड़ा प्रयत्न किया तो अब थोड़ा बहुत कभी कभी अलग दिखता है. Sometimes I know I can tell my mind, चल ये कर ले, चल वो कर ले. That there's sometimes I'm able to control my mind. There I can see my mind is different from me. We only know these two things. Ramana says, inquire. What is mind? Manasam kim. What is mind? If you start thinking like that, examine the mind. जिसको हम mind कहते हैं. Thoughts ही तो है. He says, you will come to the point, first I'll say it in English, you will come to understand that it is not a separate entity. What do I mean by not a separate entity? If I say this, what is this? My palm, my hand, connected to my hand. It can be cut. As long as it's connected, this is a palm is connected to my arm is connected to my shoulder is connected to my shoulder blade is connected to my spine is connected to my head up and pelvis below. I am a skeleton from the bone drishti. All these are parts. In the Gita it will say these are all avayavas. These are parts of the body. They are separate entity also. Though nourished by the body, separated from the body, they won't exist. So I can comfortably say this is my body. But it's a separate, I can see it. I can use it. I can use it. I can see it. Ramana says, when you start inquiring on the mind, that separate entity itself. So we have only given two existence to the mind. One is mind is all powerful. The second is mind is in my control. Somewhat. हमने ये दो अवस्था दी है मन को. Ramana says when you are actually inquiring in the right way, he's giving the conclusion now. Your conclusion will be mind is in fact not there. उसकी सत्ता नहीं है. Mind ही नहीं है. It has no independent existence of its own. It has no existence. It is not a separate entity. It is not an entity. It is not even an entity. Mind is not an entity. These are very clinching Atma vichar ka direction. Mind is not an entity. So far, what have all the practices been doing? Now you'll get a beautiful view if you can see the connection. Where do we start from in life? We start as a seeker of happiness. We are a jiva. We want affection. We want relations. We want power. We want strength. We want happiness. We want tap. That itself is like all that want. Ghabrahat ho gayi. Now this has made our minds chanchal. It runs because अंदर इतना खालीपन है, अंदर इतनी वैक्यूम है, उसको कुछ चाहिए तो वो भाग रहा है सब जगह पे अब. So our minds by habit have become running minds. We are runners, mental runners. भागता है अपने आप से. So from there to all initiation of, because now the jiva has become so restless, उसको थोड़ी शांति चाहिए. When does anybody come to religion? Religion, I'm not talking of Hindu. I keep using the word Hindu, but I keep also correcting because I have a lack of another explanatory word today. Hinduism is not even a religion. It is a way of life. We all know that. We are disconnected from that way of life. That also we know that. It's a Vedic thought model of life. In that Vedic model of life, what happens to this जो अब आज एंग्शियस बीइंग है बिकॉज उसको खुशी चाहिए, उसको पावर चाहिए, उसको पैसा चाहिए, उसको अफेक्शन चाहिए, उसको सिक्योरिटी चाहिए, उसको हेल्थ चाहिए, उसको सब कुछ चाहिए बिकॉज उसके अंदर उसको कुछ भी नहीं दिख रहा. आज इस जीव को अपने अंदर कुछ भी नहीं दिख रहा, खालीपन दिखता है, अंधेरा दिखता है, कंफ्यूजन दिखती है, लॉस्टनेस लगती है, पता ही नहीं क्या है, क्या सच है, क्या नहीं है, क्या करूं, क्या नहीं करूं, इधर जाऊं कि उधर ये सब जीवा का हाल है. Now the person इतना रेस्टलेस हो जाता है, उसको थोड़ी शांति चाहिए, because all this is only going to bring more and more dukh and klesh. It's not solving anything. It is only compounding things. It's compounding the restlessness. To such an extent the mind gets restless कि हमारी नींद उड़ जाती है. Isn't this a correct statement? Means when the mind gets so disturbed and agitated, we lose our sleep. Sleep is supposed to be a natural state to bring the mind back to its source. Means for some time nature has given us the relief that waking state will be in a vidya, very difficult state. It's a strenuous state. So relax, the mind rejuvenates, comes back. Laya, punaha bhavati. This cycle continues of samsara. Sote ho, uthte ho, natural process. Because the mind gets so disturbed, it wants an answer, it wants shanti. So it now starts putting more restlessness into its own self. Kahan hai? Starts going to mandir, starts seeking some other thing, goes to pandits, goes to astrologers, goes to vastu. It has to try some way in which it will find its peace back. And the Vedic system was that it starts now, you have actions. Now I think everybody knows the chronology very well. So you can use your actions this way, emotions this way, mind this way. ये सब हो गया. Now we have come to the point of where this mind is otherwise what was running on its own is now no longer running. It's a very shant, composed mind, still not got nasha. This mind, Ramana says, inquire. ये मन है क्या? That inquiry का process he is not given. He just says, question what is the mind. I presume this is adequate enough. Keep questioning because there is no answer to this. When you keep questioning, what is the answer? The answer is there is no mind. Naiva manasam. When you discover this mind has no existence of its own, where am I being victimized by my mind? And the other spectrum is mind itself has no existence of its own. तो उसको ये सत्ता मिल कहाँ से रही है? Where is it getting the force from? Where is it getting the existence from? Where is it getting the entity as if it's an entity in itself? Where is it getting the status of it being an entity? This he now says a little bit, gives a little reason why it is not there at all. Because he says, Vrittihi tu, indeed all vrittis. English is thoughts, we all identify as thoughts, but I've always said vritti word is a far more communicable word, in experience identifiable word than thought is. Thought is like an objective brain level as if it's got a brain wave. Maybe a theta wave, a delta wave, God knows which wave. But it has a brain wave. Thought को हम हमेशा यहाँ कहते हैं. It's thoughts. And we can identify thoughts. It's a very describable state. Vritti, we have kind of got disconnected with the meaning of the word vritti. Vritti is actually from the root, it means it abides, it stays. A vritti that is flowing is called English thought. Vritti means it's like a samskar, yes, but it has a flow. A flow, a wave. Vritti is like a wave. It rises. It has a certain topic to it. It pertains to certain object. And it is connecting to you, the one in whom this vritti has arisen. So generalizing it to say thoughts is not wrong. So it's thoughts. This vritti, all vrittis, this is a plural word, vritti. Vrittayaha is a plural. All vrittis is where he says it is centered indeed, too, indeed. It's like as if it's a very simple thing for Ramana to say. Ye to sab vrittis are all actually all boiling themselves down to ashrit hai wo. It's got an ashraya. And that ashraya is an aham vritti. So all the vrittis, multiple vrittis, infinite vrittis each one may have, countless, let me say, countless vrittis are all reduced to aham vritti. There is only one vritti which is constant. All other vrittis are connected to aham vritti throughout life. And a very important point this is. All countless vrittis are ultimately connected to only aham vritti. So what is actually mind? All these thoughts, जिसको हम आज separate entity मान रहे हैं, is actually only aham vritti. The steady perception, emergence of I thought. So in the I thought, all other thoughts have an ashray. They are dependent. In this dependent ashrita ashraya bhav is very well explained in Nyaya Darshan. So if you remember the Shat Darshanas in our Vedic schools or thoughts of seeing, आश्रय आश्रित, कौन किसका आश्रय किस पे डिपेंडेंट है. So the example they'll give is Yajna Dattaha is just a name. When he's sitting on an asan, there is a sambandha between Yajna Datta and asan. What is an asan? आश्रय दे रहा है, asan. Yajna Datta is sitting on the asan. So what is Yajna Datta? He's ashrita. He's got an ashray. आश्रय कौन दे रहा है? The asan. I thought and all the thoughts of our mind, which are called the mind, सब thoughts का आश्रय is I thought. Aham vritti. So when I say I thought, has anybody identified an I thought? Is it tangible? पकड़ में आ जाता है? Aham vritti. This I thought is actually aham vritti. Aham vritti. When is it not there with me? Always there. I am aham vritti. My reference point of aham as this when I started the class by saying I am. मैं हूँ. You are. I am this. In this aham I am, what is included? What is pointing it? What is it pointing to? Which me? What is I am pointing to? We get lost because, sorry?
Body. Like
Body. Correct. But this is all that we can think of as I. In my I component, aham में क्या है? What is aham made of? And very soon he'll say, here in this verse, 18th verse, he's saying, vrittayaha manaha, the entire thing called vritti, mind, vidhihi, know it to be aham. This whole mind is nothing but aham, thought, aham. This aham manaha, aham vritti, what is it? Is it a separate entity? So you see how close he has brought us. If we can remove the objectivity from the knowledge and see what it points to us in our experience, all the thoughts have got reduced to now only aham vritti, naiva manaha. They don't have an independent entity. If I remove the I, can there be a thought? That is what he means by saying there is no mind. Because all thoughts have ashray. They are dependent on. There is a sambandha. On I. I is steady, is constant. There is never a moment when we don't experience I vritti, aham vritti. This vritti, aham vritti, he is going to say further now. We'll do it in the next class. He says, aham ayam kuttaha. bhavati. Chinvataha. Chinvataha means be a thinker. Chintan karo is पे. Be a contemplator. Be a reflector. Chinvataha means be endowed with thinking, reflection, contemplation. What contemplation? Aham, I am kutaha bhavati. If I, even that Sanskrit, if I say it in the correct intonation, it's a meaning that gets conveyed on its own. Aham, I am kutaha bhavati. Where, kutaha, where is this? I am is this. Aham, I. Kutaha bhavati. Where is this I? He says, Nija vicharanam, when the vichara is on the nij, on self. Nij vicharanam. That is called nij vicharanam. You will find I. I means it's almost like, Are, I. Patati aham. This aham falls. Means this aham vritti falls. That falling of aham vritti will become what now? This
Manash.
excellent. I was also going to say Divya, then I said, no, I don't want to embarrass in case. Yes, that is manonasha. The entire mano is reduced to aham vritti, cognizable. I'm never without excellent. Yes, Shruti. I'm always in connection with I. Aham vritti. Ramana says, Kuttaha bhavati. Ye kahan hai aham? And again, it is not supposed to be steps and, ye hoga, fir ye hoga. Nothing. Just go think ye kahan hai. And when you start thinking ye kahan hai, you will arrive at that question. Ka answer is aham patati. Aham falls. And the entire mind was nothing but aham. On examining where is this aham, aham falls. Means mano nashaha. Nij, this is the method of vichara. Atma vichar. What is Atma vichar? Aham vichar will bring us to Atma vichar. But aham vichar cannot be in another objective thought process. So if supposing an unprepared mind through all these practices, an unqualified mind, if we say, okay, let's do aham vichar, examination of your I, what will it become? It'll become a personality chart. It'll become I'm forgetting the right word. It'll become a psychological assessment evaluation chart. Sorry?
Self-assessment.
Self-assessment, self-evaluation chart. Which means what? I am examining I. When I say I'm examining I, means now I will have, supposing there's a tool we have created, a psychological tool, because this is possible. We humans are also as common, our species is common, so we can find common traits. We have, each person has at least, I've forgotten the statistics, but there are statistics that there'll be, even though we are individual notion, but the characteristics that we have will be so common in a certain population of people. Forget that even our face, I believe, is told scientifically now that we will have at least 3 or 4 or 5 people on the planet which will be exactly like you. They'll resemble you. Science is telling us that. What does that mean? If I am not gone through the practice, and if my man hasn't come to the point of no movement, free movement, and if I do an Atma analysis, Atma vichar, what will it land up in? Do I have this quality? Do I have to become this? Do I need to be this? Do I need this? Do I need a change in myself? Should I be more kind? Should I be less angry? Should I be more giving? Should I be more caring? Should I be, I can't understand. I'm sure you people have a better way of doing this. But that personality analysis would mean this. When many years ago, it was a tough stage of life, and I was working as a therapist for a temporary time in between after coming back from the Vedantic study. And over there was a psychological center. She and I were friends also because I was in the physiotherapy center. She was in the psychological mental development center, something like this. So she had a tool and she was testing it in all the people, everybody. She needed some bakara, uh, something, whatever it's called. She needed a scapegoat. So she was making everybody go through this, and the whole staff had to go through it. And in my psychological assessment, she was shocked because it said your stress tolerance is very high. It's 9.3 on 10. It is one of the, and suddenly my mind went blank because 9.3 on 10 is as good as saying any amount of stress the system will bear without toppling, according to them. That means you're almost making it perfect. You're close to, if a 0.7 I can practice, and will that make me perfect? If Vedanta is not in your life, it can take you on a ride. Means that is almost making it perfect. Whereas what is it? It's not a quality. You are not a quality. You're not an attribute. I is mithya. It falls means what? It is mithya. It is seen, but it is not. I is also dependent on something else. That will continue in the next class. The next verses along with this. So this now is the real fulcrum of, this is Vedanta. And this is the fulcrum of self-growth, self-development, and everything else is an aid. It's just an aid. It's like a walking stick that one needs if one has some problems to walk. You need a walking stick. So if your mind is running helter-skelter everywhere and anywhere and is deeply in samsara, these practices are aids. Once one has the practice, there is inner transformation of the mind, and now this mind can be peaceful, sitting by itself. That mind has to now, and Vedanta, Ramana, Shastra, everyone says the same thing. Put in the effort. Chinvataha. You'll have to think. It will not happen on its own. You will have to put in the Purusharth. That is at another stage. So we'll conclude the class here. Any other question anybody has? Otherwise, yeah.
Not a question, but I just want to repeat what you said just to clarify my thinking. So, what we need to think about is just the term I am, but what we end up doing is we add more words to it, like I am teacher, and that is where we start working on that. How can I be a better teacher? So we need to take a step back and focus more on just the I am part without adding any of those qualities.
Absolutely. And those will be only vyavharik anyway. If I can improve, I will. The best thing about these practices, any one of them, especially in Karam Yoga itself, it comes. It is impossible that you will not be a better one. It's a byproduct. You don't have to work on it. Because your focus is anyway shifted to something higher. Being a better teacher, suppose as an example, or a better parent or a better friend, these are natural outcomes. That is why you say if you are a better person, you are obviously going to be giving the best in the world. You are always already doing what can be best. But to achieve them as an end in itself, to work for them as an end in itself, is trapping oneself in samsara. Is creating a cycle because that will never end. There'll always be, for example, there'll always be some other. You thought you worked 5 years, made yourself the best teacher. You thought in 5 years the graph changed of what is called the best.
Now
The
you
minute
want
the
to be the prince.
exactly. So this is what they mean by samsara gati. खत्म ही नहीं होगा ये तो कभी भी.
So basically, this all of this emotion, I'm sad, I'm happy, all of this is mithya. I am whatever irritated, agitated. All of that is not true, right? It's just brain, like the mind playing with us, isn't it?
Absolutely. And now you have got ready for the first chapter of the Gita. What is the first chapter of the Gita? Arjuna Vishada Yoga. The whole introduction of Arjuna's Vishad is to make the entire Gita is to make Arjuna see this whole Vishad is a Bhranti, is a Mithya. And yet it looks so real. So what is all the spiritual practices doing? It is freeing us from all these wrong things that we've added to ourselves. It's like supposing somebody has got used to eating wrong kind of food or wrong lifestyle, especially after a certain age. I think at this age that we all reach at that point, and one visit to the doctor and the doctor says you'll have to change your lifestyle. Did I not know that 20 years before? Did I need the doctor to tell me? All of us know. The cigarette has it written on it is injurious to health, and you are yet supposing someone is. You know at some point tomorrow your lungs are going to collapse. So what is all this that Shastra makes? This is where it gives. Every step is like a living knowledge. Anybody who says Shastra is ancient, Shastra, it's impossible to maneuver your life without knowledge. And those who are attempting are only falling in pits. Because that's samsara. It's not derogatory or Shastra says aisa gati hai. Choicelessly you will slip into these thoughts, sadness and anger and this and that. You're choicelessly going to have them. Why? Because the alternative path is what you have to work for. This is natural. मन तो निकल रहा है इनमें. एंड फिर बीच बीच में थोड़ा खुशी मिल जाता है, गोलगप्पा खुशी or lollipop खुशी, so something or the other nice comes around. Some after a lot of heat, some rain comes in life. It's something like that. Okay. So well understood, everyone. I think over here also. So we'll end the class. Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschat Dukha Bhag Bhave. Om Swasti Prajabhyah Paripalayantam Nyayena Margena Mahim Mahishaha Go Brahmanebhyah Shubhamastu Nityam Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Kale Varshatu Parjanyah Prithvi Sasya Shalini Deshoyam Kshobharahitah Brahmana Santu Nirbhayaः Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So, Hari Om everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deepti ji. Pranam.
Hari Om,
Pranam.
Pranam.
Thank you. Pranam to everyone.